St. Louis people, did you know that then Archbishop Cardinal Ritter, integrated Catholic schools 8 years before Brown versus the Board of Education, and that with ecclesial force he threatened to excommunicate Catholics who opposed integration? Decentralization. This is That Makes Sense to Me. It's a philosopher's vlog where the rule is less videography, more thoughts. Today, we're talking about the relationship between Christianity, specifically Catholics in St. Louis, and the Black Lives Matter movement. Now, many Catholics, myself included, struggle with church authority, but in the 1947 forced integration of Catholic schools, we have a case where historically it was used for a cause that was far ahead of its time. The old church, if you don't know, sent nuns to Selma. I'm named after Charles Vatterott, who helped pay for one of the planes. So my question is, if St. Louis is the new Selma, will the new church come out in condemnation of racial injustice now? Police brutality, mass incarceration, and recently the illegal counter-protest police tactics. Priory, Villa, SLU, Viz, Coriezu, the Diocese. What will you do now? If you lead or influence these institutions, you have cultural power. How will you use it? It's possible, though, that maybe you're not convinced that you should. It's increasingly clear we live in an era where facts matter less than tweets. So rather than talk about inequality in sentencing or the socioeconomic impact of implicit bias, I think there's a comparison to be made. Think for a minute about the kind of scum that Jesus usually spent time with. Tax collectors, prostitutes, cripples, outcasts. The righteous upstanders of the world probably would have thought that he was nuts, but he would say, care for the least of my people anyway. That's caring for them. That caring for them was a caring for him. Now, I actually delight in imagining the kind of brouhaha the world felt when the rabbi spoke to a hooker, invited her home for dinner. I bet it would be similar to the outrage that so many white Catholics would feel if they were asked to even talk to the people that we call thugs. Tax collectors were corrupt. Thugs are supposedly corrupt. Prostitutes were morally lost. Thugs are supposedly also morally lost. The cripples and beggars and lepers were thought of as socially less than, and there's no doubt that there's no one in our society socially less than a thug. Now, never mind that the mythology of black criminality was created as a political calculation. Never mind that criminality is higher in any area ravaged with economic disparity, regardless of race. See my other video about that. Never mind that the economic gap between blacks and whites is widening. These are all facts, but forget about those facts for now. If you're Catholic or if you're religious in any way, is a central tenet of the faith not the intrinsic value of the outcast? Are we not expected to care more for those that society discards? Do we not have a divine commandment to love the thug? And even if you can't grant that, how much more should we care for the innocent that die? Eric Garner, Tamir Rice, Philando Castile. Alton Sterling was already on the ground. Police on top of him, already held down. There was a video. Eric Garner's last words were, "I can't breathe." What justification can we have for this death? Those deaths, these were not thugs. Their only crime was being in the wrong place with the wrong color. So, if you are writing off police brutality because you think somehow killing a thug is okay, are you not violating a divine command to see the humanity in the outcast? The line is, "When I was in prison, you visited me," not, "I never made it to prison because you shot me while I was unarmed." But perhaps it's something else. Perhaps there's a cultural pressure for you to lean conservative politically. You're pro-life, you have a pro-life identity. Black Lives Matter feels kind of lefty, so the logic is, I'm pro-life, therefore all lives matter, as if Aquinas was on Twitter. I think it is critically important to the American Catholic identity to recognize that, yes, sometimes the boundaries of our values will line up with the boundaries of our political institutions, but the idea that we could use political institutions as a basis for moral judgments is borderline heretical. It is taking the power of moral discernment away from the church and giving it to Washington, D.C., and to the winds of political change which blow, last I checked, in any direction there's cash. So, if you allow this mammon-based identity to determine your stance on how you feel about race in this country, I have news for you. At best, you are working against the spirit of integration that our church committed to 60 years ago under pain, I'd add, of excommunication, but at worst, you're personally failing your divinely ordained duty to recognize the humanity of the outcast, neither of which I think should be morally acceptable to anyone who claims to follow Christ. So, to wrap up, 3 main arguments. 1, historically, the Catholic Church has been able to push for racial justice. Did that just end? I want to know what we're going to do about it now. 2, if you think that because you are Catholic, this means you must reject any and all social movements that do not align with the Republican Party, you're implicitly taking away moral authority from your conscience and from the church and giving it to backroom political calculators. That's morally lazy. And from a theological perspective, I think it's a modern heresy. 3, finally, there may be doubts in your mind about the legitimacy of the claims of Black Americans. You, as a white person, don't feel like they're oppressed, so why listen if they say that they are? But there can be no doubt of our obligation, our Christian, our Catholic, our religious, and frankly human ethical obligation to listen to and to serve the outcasts of society. So, if you are Catholic, or if you lead a Catholic institution, it is your moral obligation to stand with the racial justice movement in the battlegrounds of the new Selma, St. Louis. If you can't say Black Lives Matter, see if you can say Outcast Lives Matter. That's who Least of My People meant back then. I hope it's clear what it means now. Likely this is the first video of mine that you've ever seen. I make videos about philosophy and bioethics and philosophy of technology and occasionally physics. I just hope to make things that you get to the end of the video and you say, you know what, that makes sense to me. And I also, in the process of making these videos, sort of sort out my own thoughts, so it ends up working out for everybody. If you're new, if there's someone you think this video might apply to, send it to them. Please like, share, subscribe, and all that jazz. And if you disagreed with anything that I said, or agreed, I really would like to hear about it in the comments. I do engage with people in comments, so let the vitriol begin. I mean, sorry, please keep the comments civil, and I would love to have a discussion. Cool, alright, see you in the next one, bye.